Hi everyone, it's Katrina. Number 10. The Quinametzin. Long before the Spanish arrived in Mexico, even before the mighty citizens of Teotihuacan fled their city of gods, there were giants. In Mesoamerican mythology, a race of giants known as the Quinametzin lived in Mexico. We don't know exactly how tall they were, but they were bigger than average-sized humans. Friar Andres de Olmos wrote in his chronicles that the bones of a human foot were uncovered in New Spain in the 16th century. Each toe on the appendage was about the same size as a human hand. Unfortunately, though, de Olmos might not be the most reliable source. He wrote a lot about giants between 1528 and 1571, so it's hard to say if he was obsessed or if he was just writing down the facts. The Codex Zumarraga is an ancient text that explains that for the indigenous people of Mexico, giants were creations of the gods. But they perished like the citizens of Atlantis during a great flood that swept through the mountains of Tlaxcala. Either that, or they were vanquished by a group of merchants who moved inland from the coast and stole their land. There are a few different myths and legends, but they all say that the giants existed and were killed. The best estimates we have place the death of the giants, the Quinametzin, at 200 BC. Keep in mind there is no physical proof of this, which is why it's something scientists can't explain. We have eyewitness testimonies and legends, but there are no preserved human fossils or archaeological remains. It's possible the ancients were trying to understand the megalithic structures found scattered across Mexico, so they dreamt up stories of giants to make sense of what they saw in the world around them. It's also possible that giants or a bigger race of humans did exist, and maybe they ate people, which would explain why they were wiped out. And now for number 9. But first, it's shout-out time! I want to give a big thank you to Mega Pint Molly for the super thanks and for supporting this channel. Thanks, Molly! If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for more videos like these. Number 9. The Temple of Olympian Zeus. The Temple of Olympian Zeus in Athens isn't so impressive when you look at it today. A couple of the columns are still standing, and you can see some broken into pieces on the ground. Zeus isn't anywhere to be seen. But if you have a good imagination, 2,600 years ago, this place was amazing. It was the largest temple in ancient Greece, and people came from far and wide to see it and bask in its glory. It was built to be a wonder of the ancient world. Pisistratus was a politician in ancient Athens who ruled as a tyrant. To appease the people, he ordered the construction of large, impressive monuments, and to show off. Construction began on the vast temple in the 6th century BC, around 550 BC. However, it wouldn't be completed for another 650 years. It's believed Roman Emperor Hadrian was responsible for adding the finishing touches to the temple in 132 AD, so he gets a lot of the credit. The first stones were laid over the ruins of an outdoor sanctuary built by Pisistratus. After his death, the temple was demolished and his sons began construction on a new temple. This one would be colossal, a great temple worthy of the king of the gods himself, Zeus. But the construction ran into a series of roadblocks when the pair behind it was expelled from Athens in 510 BC. There were assassination attempts, love triangles, and all sorts of things going on, so finishing the temple was not a priority. The temple remained untouched for years, with Greeks believing it was impossible to build such a monolithic construct. Aristotle even wrote about the temple, calling it an example of Athenian tyrants trying to keep the population busy with construction instead of rebelling. Then came King Antiochus IV Epiphanes, who was so deluded he thought himself to be the human personification of Zeus. So of course, the temple to himself had to be amazing. He started the project again in 174 BC, commissioning great chunks of marble to be fashioned in the Corinthian style. He died, however, in 164 BC with the temple half finished. Emperor Hadrian then finally finished it off in the 2nd century AD. It remained a place of worship until around the 6th century. By then, Zeus had fallen, and Christ had risen as the primary Lord and Savior, and the temple was dismantled and used in various building projects. Although it's not technically standing today, we know most of the history of the temple. The one thing scientists can't necessarily figure out is its construction. There were 104 columns holding up the structure that was 300 feet long. Each one weighed a whopping 364 tons. There was supposedly the statue of Zeus himself, but not a single piece of evidence exists to suggest it once stood at the Olympian. Nobody knows what happened to it, or how truly massive it was. According to historical accounts, though, it was big, and was crafted in the same style as the statue of Athena at the Parthenon. There was also a massive statue of Hadrian, maybe even a few Hadrian statues, which are also missing. Number 8. Octopus Aliens. A new scientific theory is suggesting octopuses are aliens that came to Earth in cryogenically preserved eggs. According to some, squid and octopus eggs may have arrived on our planet millions of years ago in icy pods. Since the octopus and its cephalopod relatives are so strange, maybe this explains it? The thing about the octopus is that scientists have never been able to explain how it suddenly emerged on our planet 270 million years ago. It has no history that we know about previous to that time, and it doesn't appear to have evolved from anything that we've been able to find. They are soft and squishy, and it's very hard to find ancient relatives, if there are any. So where did it come from? It simply showed up and has been living in our oceans ever since. Scientists from the University of Chicago and the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology in Japan joined forces to study their DNA. They found that octopuses have 33,000 genes, roughly 10,000 more than a human. The octopus is without a doubt the most alien creature we have on the planet. They are scary smart, can solve puzzles, use tools, and are amazing escape artists. Its nervous system, brain, eyes, and borderline paranormal abilities put it far ahead of humans on the evolutionary scale. They just never bothered to build cities or try to take over the planet like we did. Their arms and suckers can basically think on their own, and they even dream when they're sleeping. Because the majority of their neurons exist in their arms and suckers and not in their brain, that makes them as close to alien intelligence as scientists can find on Earth. This radical theory of the octopus coming from space was proposed by 33 scientists participating in a new study. They suggested that octopuses arrived on Earth through panspermia. This means their eggs hitchhiked a ride on comets and asteroids that exploded in our atmosphere or landed in the oceans. This was a very big study, and it was published in the prestigious journal Progress in Biophysics and Molecular Biology. Scientists suggested octopuses weren't the only things that arrived on Earth from somewhere else in the universe. The entire Cambrian explosion may have originated in the stars. Comets and asteroids bombarded the Earth, carrying with them organic molecules from other worlds. These molecules may have been the first life forms on the planet. Then, unrelated to the Cambrian explosion 500 million years ago, octopuses showed up on their own comets. It would make sense because they seem to be far ahead on the evolutionary path from a world that isn't ours. They have no obvious ancestors, their physiology doesn't match any other living creature, and in all honesty, they are total anomalies on this planet. So maybe they did arrive on Earth by hitching a ride on an asteroid. But at the moment, nobody can say for sure. What do you think about this theory? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. Number 7. Baldurs Rock. Baldurs Rock is a mysterious stone that dates back to the beginning of the Viking Age in the 9th century AD, but it could have been created much earlier, maybe even in the 8th century. Nobody knows the purpose of the stone, but have suggested it may have been a memorial megalith at the head of a grave, or maybe a burial site for a powerful family. The standing stone is positively enormous, towering 24 feet above the ground. It's the tallest stone of its kind in Norway, yet it's largely unknown to most people. The stone is standing behind some trailers in the middle of the countryside, out of view of tourists and untouched by modern archaeologists. The stone gets its name from the Norse god Baldur, who was Odin's son and the brother of Thor. In Viking tradition, Frithjof the Bold was a fearless warrior who had many adventures. He fought bravely as a Viking and burned down Baldur's temple. He also became the king of Ringerike in Norway. The only evidence we have that Frithjof was a real person comes from Icelandic sagas that were written in 1300 AD. Like so many ancient Viking characters, there is almost no physical evidence Frithjof existed, or that his adventures really happened. However, Baldurs Rock may have been the memorial stone placed on his grave. But that's just according to the local legend. So, unfortunately, without further evidence, we can't say for sure whose grave is marked by the stone. Number 6. The mechanics of the Great Pyramid. It's been 4,500 years since the Great Pyramid of Giza was completed, and still scientists can't say with 100% certainty how it was made. For years, scientists have tried to use archaeological evidence to work out the logistics of this mega project. We know based on historical text it had nothing to do with slave labor. Recently, scientists have estimated it took as few as 2,000 organized workers to complete the project in about 2 decades. But how could this have been possible? The Great Pyramid is 481 feet tall, built under the reign of Pharaoh Khufu sometime around 2560 BC, and every stone that was used in the construction was mined from a quarry just south of the pyramid. But how did a handful of workers get the stones they needed all the way across the desert to build the tallest monument in the world on loose sand? Some experts have theorized that the Egyptians used canals, waterways that allowed them to transport the blocks on boats directly to the base of the pyramid. Other researchers think the Egyptians got the sand wet first, making a slip and slide across the desert. But then there is the matter of how they got these stones 481 feet in the air without using a crane. Even today, lifting a 2.5-ton stone to the peak of the Great Pyramid without a crane would prove extremely difficult. So, how in the world were the ancient Egyptians able to accomplish this feat? The answer could lie in something very simple. Yanis Gordon was among the university team investigating Hatnub, a rock quarry in the eastern desert. Yanis said he and his team uncovered a unique ramp flanked by 2 pairs of stairs fitted with special holes for wooden posts. The ramp is incredibly steep, but could have been used to lift extremely heavy rocks to exceptional heights using ropes and wooden posts. Workers on the stairs flanking the ramp used a pulley system to yank the stone up a little bit, then they used wooden pegs to secure it in place. This method could have theoretically allowed the Egyptians to lift the heavy stones used in the construction of the pyramid to exceptional heights without the use of a ramp. It would have been hard work, but not impossible. But this is still just a theory. The exact construction method of the ancient Egyptians is still an unsolved mystery, one that we'll hopefully be able to figure out in the future. If they could do it, we should be able to understand how. Number 5. The Sego Canyon Rock Art. Thousands of years before today, indigenous people living in Utah painted some extremely strange pieces of artwork on rock walls in Sego Canyon. This rock art is located just west of Colorado, off US Route 70. In the beginning of the 20th century, a small coal mining town sprang up here. When the operation failed, the town went bankrupt and was eventually deserted. Something very similar likely happened thousands of years ago. The indigenous people painted ghostly images on the canyon walls, then vanished into thin air. Archaeologists think there were 3 different tribal groups who lived in the canyon and added to the rock art. There were the Utes, the Fremont, and the Archaic peoples. The Ute tribe were the ones who gave Utah its name. They painted horses and other animals sometime after 1493. Considering that Christopher Columbus was the one who brought horses to the Americas, that's the only timeline that makes sense. North America did have horses, but they went extinct 10 to 12,000 years ago. Then there were the Archaic people who lived here as early as 8,000 BC. However, their rock paintings have been very difficult to trace. But the artwork created by the Archaic people are also the strangest. They left behind images of weird-looking figures reminiscent of alien beings. On the walls of Sego Canyon are creatures with huge empty eye sockets, circular heads, and misshapen bodies. Some of these figures even wear what appear to be helmets, as if they had spacesuits on. These strange beings are joined by odd floating objects emitting some kind of energy from their bottoms. And in all honesty, they look like UFOs blasting into the sky. Archaeologists have dismissed any notion that these drawings were made to represent alien visitors. The experts say the figures were representations of gods, and according to them, the things that look like UFOs are likely rain clouds with streaks of rain falling from them. But this is all just guesswork, so we don't really know who these figures were. They could have been gods, aliens, or an entirely unknown race of human beings. What do you think is depicted in the rock art? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and while you're at it, be sure to subscribe. Number 4. The Green Rock. There is a giant green rock in the ancient capital of the Hittite Empire, which is located in modern Turkey. The green rock is beautiful and oddly enchanting, but it's also extremely strange. Locals call it the wishing stone, and they say prayers and ask for things while holding both their hands to the bizarre rock. Archaeologists are currently struggling to figure out what the stone was used for and how it made it to this ancient site in the first place. Professor Andreas Schachner says the rock could be made from serpentine or nephrite. He also believes it was used as an object of great importance by every civilization that lived in the area following the annihilation of the Hittites in 1280 BC. That was when they signed a treaty with the Egyptians and began to fade away into the history books. Fun fact, the Treaty of Kadesh between Egypt and the Hittites is believed to be the first written peace treaty ever signed. But we still don't know much about these people. What we do know, however, is that they had immense military power during the Bronze Age. They fought for 2 decades against the Egyptian pharaohs but could never reach a sure victory. We also know the Hittites had their own unique religion, and they built temples in all their great cities, especially their capital of Hattusa, where the Green Rock still stands today. The Green Rock looks extremely out of place amidst the sandy ruins of the city. It's still bright green, looking almost like polished jade. It was likely mined from somewhere nearby. The fact that it's here isn't that crazy, but it's a mystery as to why it hasn't been destroyed or stolen throughout the years. It's like every other piece of the civilization was left to ruin, but nobody dared touch the shimmering green stone, not in over 3,000 years. This begs the question, does it have some type of supernatural power? And was it believed to hold the soul of an ancient god like a genie in a bottle? Unfortunately, we just don't have the answers. Number 3. Eye in the Tuscan Sky. On October 27, 1954, something happened in Tuscany that scientists have never been able to explain. Fiorentina was playing against Pistoiese in a football game with 10,000 people in attendance when something unbelievable caused every single spectator to turn their eyes to the sky. The players stopped playing, the commentators stopped commenting, and the spectators stopped spectating. Everyone fell silent, and they all turned their eyes to the Tuscan sky. An unidentified flying object was right there above them. It was shaped somewhat like a disc, performing impossible acrobatics through the clouds. So it didn't seem to be an aircraft. This took place in the 1950s, meaning there was nothing any government had created, not even in secret, that could perform such miraculous movements. It wasn't a short sighting either. The extraterrestrial spectacle went on for a full 15 minutes. Many people in attendance that day described the UFO as egg-shaped. Everyone watched as it zipped around, then disappeared as quickly as it had arrived. But just as it vanished, it released silver flakes of some bizarre substance like long strings of glitter. The glitter covered everything, getting stuck in the trees and falling on the playing field. It's been almost 70 years and nobody has ever come up with an explanation for what happened. It's been so long that most scientists these days attribute it to mass hysteria. Some have suggested it was spider silk that fell from the sky during some weird spider migration. But that's almost more outlandish than aliens. They didn't have the kinds of scientific technology we do today, so that residue was never tested. And since they didn't have cell phones, it wasn't recorded and posted online for everyone to see. This event was very real though, and was witnessed by 10,000 people. Number 2. The Clerksdorp Spheres. The Clerksdorp Spheres are what we call out-of-place objects, and these tiny orbs are an estimated 3 billion years old. Every scientific analysis has proven that these spheres are pyrophyllite deposits that were formed billions of years ago by natural means. They were found in Ottosdal, South Africa, and appeared in newspaper articles in the 1980s. The reason the spheres caught so much attention was because they look like cricket balls. Each spherical orb, an ordinary mineral deposit, has perfectly symmetrical rings around its middle. These lines look as though they were carved on purpose, made with such precision that they could have been produced by a machine. But who in the world was manufacturing tiny cricket balls 3 billion years ago? The answer is likely nobody. Ever since they were discovered, the Clerksdorp Spheres have been the source of endless controversy. In the 1980s, people believed they came from a higher civilization that lived before the biblical flood. One museum curator claimed they vibrated on their own. Other alleged scientists have called them proof of alien life on this planet, way before the world even had oceans. Geologist Bruce Cairncross described them as mystery spheres in 2006. And when a psychic examined the stones, they declared the artifacts to be remnants from a spaceship. None of the wackier theories have ever been proven, though. The only thing scientists have said for sure is that these spheres are mineral concretions. They became spheres naturally over many years in the Earth. As for the mysterious rings that make them such a hot topic, they were likely imprints from the host stone. The rock likely left a layer effect, which we see in the lines. It's all geological, not so much supernatural. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Number 1. Ancient tank tracks. A Russian academic and geologist by the name Dr. Alexander Koltepin believes he's discovered proof that an ancient civilization lived on Earth 14 million years ago. Alexander says the civilization was highly advanced and had in their possession all-terrain vehicles. As evidence, Alexander cites a series of mysterious tracks. Tracks that look like they were left by some weekend dirt bikers in Turkey's Phrygian Valley. The tracks are very real. We have photographs of them and we know they are there. However, there is no scientific evidence for what made them. The ruts are extremely deep and look as though they were petrified shortly after they were made. But now they are nothing but grooves in the solid rock. Think of a dinosaur footprint, only with prehistoric wheels. When a dinosaur stepped in some mud, that mud would harden, and millions of years later, its tracks would still be there. This is the same kind of thing. But Dr. Koltepin says the tracks were made by intelligent beings. They may not have been human, but must have been smart enough to build vehicles with wheels. Archaeologists have known about the tracks for a long time. They are in the middle of the ancient lands of the Phrygians, who rose as a powerful civilization in the 8th century BC. Some experts have theorized the markings in the rock could be the petrified remains of wagon wheel tracks from the days of the Phrygians. But others have suggested they were made by alien vehicles. Dr. Koltepin is convinced the tracks are 14 million years old, and he is, after all, a geologist. But other than him, there aren't any respected scientists willing to confirm the dating. What do you think? Ancient chariots or alien bikers? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up for more. See you next time. Bye!